I'm myself an Edelman. I was born Edelman when I was about 20 years old, before, no, 22 years old when we got married. I changed my name to a Hebrew name, which by translation is Edelman. My name now is Ednat, which, as I said, is a translation, a nice translation of Edelman.
My name is Sarah. I'm Yuval's wife.
I'm Judith Edelman, Edelman Green, and my father was Murray Edelman. My uncle was Milton Edelman, his twin brother, and Seymour Edelman. It's a big part of my identity. I wrote a book, Immigrant Lessons, about the Edelman family.
My name is Lital Goldstein. This is my name now.
Well, I'm Zayda's grandson and Judith's son.
Okay, I'm an Edelman through my mom, Judith, who is a part of a long line of Edelmans.
To live in Israel is to be at home, at the place where I was born, where my family lives, and where our nation was here 2,000 years ago, and we came back to establish it. I mean, not me myself, but my parents and the generation before, and we feel at home. We never felt anywhere else at home, only here.
I chose Israel as my home. We made Aliyah in 1984. I think the moment of decision was when I was a student in 1977 at Hebrew University, and I took a bus from one campus in Jerusalem to the other, and I saw that in every house there was a Hanukkah menorah lit in the window. And I thought, wow, that's what it means to live in a Jewish country. Because I was like the only Jew in my school except for my sisters. And I was very excited about the Jewishness. Instead of feeling alienated and different, it was home. I always loved Hebrew. I learned Hebrew from the age of 15. And Bernie felt the same way. I love living by the Jewish calendar. I love it that Friday is Shabbat nationally, that everyone comes home with a challah and flowers, that Saturday's a day of rest, whatever that means to each individual. It can be synagogue, it can be going to the beach, but the rhythm of the country is a Jewish rhythm. I love the holidays in Israel. I love how the little kids get dressed up with little crowns of flowers on Shavuot. I love how there's matzah in every store at Passover, and every household has a Seder. That I'm not a minority, I'm a majority. But with that comes the responsibility of being kind to minorities, because I know what it's like to be a minority. I feel that life has an extra layer of meaning in Israel, for me, and I hope for my children.
Israel for me is the only place on earth that I can live, and it's the most important place for the Jewish people.
Well, Israel for me is mostly about family and friends. I feel like here I have family I'm very close to. I live by my parents, I live by my wife's parents, and also close to all my friends.
For me to live in Israel, it's like having my parents' dream come true of having an actual life in a Jewish land and being able to be Jewish freely. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of living in Israel.
Most of my experience with the army, first of all, I was in the ground forces, you say it, I believe. I started, as a, how do you say it, like when you start the army, you have a period in which you have basic training, and then I was sent to be to a corporal school. I don't know if it's I think it's not the word corporal. It's like the first row of commanders, the lowest level. Like to be in charge of 10, 12 soldiers. So I was sent there, and then after that I was picked up for officer school, and I served as an officer for another 2 years, altogether around 3 years. And I really, at that time, when I served, there was no war, so I didn't have the experience of being in war. So I really enjoyed it. My brother, younger brother, 5 years younger than me, joined the army, and he served in the parachute division or battalion. And unfortunately, during the 6 days war, he was in the last day of the war, he was killed by an Egyptian sniper. While I was in Canada at that time studying, and I received this said letter, and so my experience in the army was a good one, because there was no war, so an army is a good place to be. You command people and you sort of play the games in brackets, and then during the war, 6-day war, we were in Canada studying, so we missed the war, so to speak. And later on, I served in the reserve unit, but again, not during a particular war. So, generally speaking, the army gave me a good start in life, to take care on myself, and to be able to tell others to do things that I want. My 3 daughters served in the Israeli army. Lital, the oldest one, was serving in the intelligence force, and my second daughter, Daphne, was an officer in the medics. She was an officer, and she was the first woman soldier that commanded a course of medics, battlefield medics. I don't know if it's the proper way to say it. And she, after that, studied medicine at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And unfortunately, in her 5th year, she, on her way to a hospital to get practice, she was killed in a car accident. And it's about 21, almost, more than 20 years ago. By now she would be 46, I believe. And Maya is the the third daughter that served in the army. She was like a social worker in the Air Force, and later on also in the ground forces. She was taking care on problematic soldiers and the problems that they have at home and so on.
Okay, I personally didn't serve in the Israeli Defense Forces because I came to Israel as a 26-year-old married with a child, and they don't conscript married people with children. There are women who are in the army who are married and have children, but they're career army. However, I managed to acquire quite a few negative experiences nevertheless, because Bernie, my husband, was conscripted as a doctor, and I had to live a month a year without him, raising 2 little children at the time. Now I have 3, but 2 little children, and it was like Murphy's Law. Every time he went away, the car broke down, the dishwasher broke down, the washing machine broke down, the kids got sick, I got sick. It was like so difficult to cope. There was tension around the issue. I said, take the children with you to the army. I said, there's childcare in the army, and he said, no, I've got a very important job there, I have to be on call. So that was hard, but the hardest thing, and I wrote a lot about this in my book, Immigrant Lessons, was being the mother of a soldier in a combat unit. Now, Rafi did a lot of community service and helping children in the army, but for a third of his service, he was in dangerous places guarding. He got dysentery from the unsanitary conditions. He had to carry heavy machinery. He was on the front line of the Jewish people doing guard duty, and I didn't sleep. I lost weight, I gained weight, I aged. It was almost impossible for me. And if you think about the fact that I grew up protesting the Vietnam War with Laney, and grew up in a very anti-war environment, to suddenly be in a country where the military is seen as necessary, as important. Even seeing my son walk in the door in an army uniform was a shock. I worried about him. I sent him packages. I surrounded him with love. And when I complained or talked about it, it didn't seem to be the thing to do, because you were supposed to be brave about it, and I really wasn't. And then when Shira, as a feminist, chose to be in a mixed unit of boys and girls, I was proud of her as a feminist, that she did the hardest job possible. And I was so proud of her leadership. And she worked on a peaceful border, but she also wore combat gear, she carried a gun, she wore army boots, she wore a uniform. And as a mother, I was extremely worried. I think the army was very heavy on her psyche. She saw some things and experienced some things that were very hard on her and have affected her. She had the good sense to object to it and to say, wait, you know, maybe girls shouldn't be equal in the army if it ruins their bodies, if they have to carry 25 kilos of equipment, and if they're in dangerous and very unpleasant situations. I'm very proud of all 3 of my children that they contributed to society. All 3 of them did community service in the army. I don't know if people know that the Army is about half about helping society as volunteer work. So Rafi started a sandwich business for street children, which succeeded, and now employs 10 children, and they sell to the electric company. Very proud of that. He took children who were under house arrest, who did drugs, who stole, and taught them hygiene, and taught them business ethics, and taught them how to market. And then he took the funds that they made and bought them clothes. And some of these kids had never owned their own pair of jeans. Shira helped a poor soldier who didn't have enough to eat. And the Army sent her to help her pay her bills. The Army opened its kitchen so the girl could take home meat and potatoes to her grandparents who didn't have enough to eat. The Army was responsible for all soldiers 7 days a week. So even when she went home for Shabbat, they had to feed her. And Shira was instrumental in helping this girl. The first night of this girl in the Army, she cried, and Shira said to her, "Why are you crying?" She said, "I've never had a bed before. I have a bed." And Ilana worked with children, Russian immigrants, poor people, underprivileged children, and she worked in the education corps, teaching them values. She was magnificent. So I guess a positive Army experience for me was seeing the good that my children did in society as soldiers. I want to add that as a family, Bernie was conscripted as a doctor to go live on an Air Force base for a year and a half. We had been in Israel for about 3 years, so we put down roots, we had friends, we had a synagogue, we had jobs. And they drafted him, and they said as a doctor he was going to do a year and a half, and they sent him to an Air Force base in the middle of the desert, in the Negev, and we couldn't afford to keep 2 households, so we went with him. And there I was, uprooted from my new roots, no friends, no job, and my husband was in uniform and happy. He liked it. He had a job. He was the doctor of the Air Force Base. So I went to study, and the kids went to nursery school. I started my master's degree at Ben Gurion University, but it was very hard, maybe the hardest period of my life. Again, as a sort of hippie from Madison who grew up protesting the Vietnam War, to suddenly be a military wife on an Air Force base where we woke up to a siren and F-16s flying in the air, and there was nothing liberal or progressive about life on a military base. That was a very hard period in my life. What did you do in the Army?
אני שירתתי במודיעין, במקום מאוד סודי ומסווג.
I was in intelligence in a place that involved great secrecy.
אני מאוד גאה, יש לי גאוות יחידה, מה שנקרא.
I feel proud of my unit.
לגמרי. עשיתי עבודה משרדית.
I worked in an office job.
נכון. היום כנראה אם הייתי מתגייסת, הייתי הולכת להיות קרבית.
But today, if I were inducted into the Army, I would choose to be in a combat unit.
נכון. קשר מאוד משמעותי מבחינתי לצבא, יש לי היום, כי הבן שלי משרת בצבא.
Today, I feel that I have a very strong connection to the Army because my son is in the Army. Golani is a top combat division. They're given very difficult tasks. Ital, as a mother, is saying that her son is an extremely combative situation.
וזהו, עכשיו אני דואגת.
She worries.
זהו. אוקיי, אז אני אגיד את זה ככה. אני מצד אחד, אני מאוד דואגת. מצד שני, אני הכי גאה בעולם, ואני מסתובבת כמו טווסית בערך. ואין מישהו שאני לא אגיד את המילה גולני לפחות פעם אחת ביום.
Okay, on one hand, Lital feels very worried as a mother. On the other hand, she is so proud that Yanai is in Golani, and she walks around like a peacock, and there's not one person she's not going to mention, hey, by the way, my son's in Golani.
And my icon in the Facebook is the flag of Golani.
I would say negative experience is guarding and having to be in places where I didn't feel like we need to be. That means serving in Hebron. Hebron is a city where it's 90% Arab population and 10% Jewish settler population. And we're right in the heart of Hebron, and every time one of the Jewish families wanted to go out and pray, we had to walk with them, and you had to close down streets, and I really thought we didn't have to be there, and I really didn't like the experience there. Positive experience, again, is my friends. I went in with my youth movement. We were 30 guys and girls from the same, growing up together from the youth group. Started off on kibbutz, then we split into the army unit, so we went with all the guys into the combat unit. It was very special, serving with my best friends.
It's pretty crazy, and it just makes you feel like a part of the country, a part of everything going around there. There could be some difficult times, like in war times, where in my particular job I had to help civilians get into shelters and help keep them protected there. But I also had positive experiences as working with children from bad backgrounds and being able to help them out, making sure they stay in school, making sure they also enlist into the army and give back to society. And it's just a very maturing experience, giving an 18-year-old so much responsibility and being able to step up to the plate.
I'm a first generation in Israel, and I was born before the establishment of the State of Israel, and I have a birth certificate from the British mandate that was here, so I'm considered a Palestinian. And my parents came from Europe after the war has started, but they were not in, they were illegal immigrants. They came illegally, they penetrated the border. I mean, they came by a boat, and they were planning to live in a kibbutz, but after a couple of years they left the kibbutz, and they became they lived in the city, in Ramat Gan, and I was born there.
I'm a fifth generation in Israel. My great-father came from Russia, and we don't know any other life, even though we studied in Montreal. I think it's a great privilege to live in Israel, and it's quite uncomfortable, all the wars, but we live with it, and we see our future and our great-grandchildren's futures in here.
I'm first generation in Israel. I chose to live in Israel. I made Aliyah. That makes it harder and easier. I chose it, so it's what I wanted. I love it. I had my ups and downs. The first 10 years were the hardest, but I love it. I have an accent when I speak Hebrew. So even though my identity in my life is Israel, when people hear me speak, they say, "Are you American?" So that's kind of hard, that whole accent thing. My dad made a wonderful joke once. He said that his grandmother and his grandchildren had the same accent. They said, "What? I want?" In English. I think for my children, they don't ask the same questions. I don't think it'll be as hard for them when their children are in the army as it was for me, having chosen it. It's more natural for them. They speak Hebrew and English without accents. It's more natural. It's more just where they were born, where they grew up. I think they nevertheless appreciate Israel, but you'll have to ask them. I'm first generation. My father and mother were first generation Americans, and in my case they were last generation Americans because I left.
I was born in Canada to two Israeli students. I consider myself an Israeli. From the side of my mother, I'm sixth generation in Israel, and I'm very proud of it. And on the father's side, I'm a second generation.
Well, I'm also first and also second generation in Israel. I made Aliyah when I was 1 year old, so basically I'm first generation, but my parents are the real first generation. I think the difference between us is they're much more idealistic, Zionistic. They're true Zionists who came to Israel, and I think that's the main difference. I'm less idealistic.
Well, I'm a second generation in Israel. My parents made Aliyah before I was born, so I got to grow up here. And for me, it just being a proud Israeli. And for me, it's like, it's normal to be Jewish or to live by Jewish law and being surrounded by Israelis. For them, it was very hard being Jewish in a non-Jewish country. So for me, it's normal. For them, it's a big change. It's a lot more than what it is for me.
Growing up in Israel when I was a child was a very good experience at that time. Everything was like open. People were, even though we lived in a town, still our neighbors, we had very good relations with our neighbors. Doors were sort of open. Everyone knew each other in the neighborhood, and we had friends, and we went to school, and in school it was not only knowledge, but also we received also a lot, it was just before during the establishment of the State of Israel, so teachers and youth movements were building up the patriotism and other things which are related to the state, and I remember it as a very good childhood, even though the economical situation was fairly difficult because the War of Independence took a lot of effort economically and otherwise, and but we were happy with what we had, because almost everyone had just the same. I mean, there was not very rich one and very poor ones. Most of the people lived from what they have, and they worked hard for that. I studied at McGill engineering, and when I was just about to graduate, there was a bicentennial year in Canada, and the immigration there approached me in 1967, and they asked me, they offered me to be a Canadian citizen, a Canadian passport. And I was young, patriotic, maybe a little bit stupid, naive, maybe. And I said, I need a Canadian passport. I have an Israeli passport, and I don't need another passport. This maybe can show you a little bit about, you know, how I feel about Israel and not being an Israeli. I sort of refused to accept Canadian citizenship. Later on, when I became wiser and this, I said I could be both. I could have a Canadian passport and Israeli passport, but at that time I refused it.
I was born by the sea of Tel Aviv, and when I was very young, from Yafo, which is near Tel Aviv, the Arab snipers were shooting on Tel Aviv, and it was before the independent war. And every day when I went to the kindergarten, my mother had to cross a street where a sniper was sitting on a roof in Yafo, and he could see the whole way of the street. And we used to count. Once he gave a shot, then we knew that he had to refill his revolver. So we used to make 1, 2, 3 and then cross the road. And every day when I walked to the kindergarten and came back, it was under fire. And we saw it as a natural way of living, because we knew that soon the independence will come. And we were very confident, I mean my parents, were very confident that we'll win this war and Israel belongs to us, and came a time when the Jewish people needed their homeland. So it was being very sure and never afraid. But I must say that by now, at my age, I'm a little bit tired of all the wars, and now that I have a grandchild in the army, I can hardly sleep. And I hope, I pray for peace.
I didn't grow up in Israel. I came here when I was 26.
I was raised here in Ramat HaSharon, and I think that my generation is exactly between my parents and my children that are, like, when I was young, the TV here was black and white, okay? And it's like the songs are the...
Songs with love of Israel.
Yeah, that was like typical for our, so I'm in between. But my story is, I went to the Scout. We went on Tuesday and Saturdays. So I went on this Saturday, and we went to the
orchards.
As we went there, and we do our activity there, over there, and they train us like in the army. We were young, but we play like soldiers, and we have to crawl, and the sun went down, so it was like twilight time, and suddenly, out of nowhere, came a really big jeep, and go home quickly, quickly and go to the first shelter closest to the and go and be inside and don't go anywhere. And we a little bit panicked. We didn't know what happened, and after we knew that in the highway 10 minutes from here, okay, walking maybe more, but there was a terrorist attack in a bus. They took hostages on there, and there was a fight just 10 minutes from here. A few of the terrorists ran, and they thought that they come to the area that we were there doing our activity. So you see, you asked me, and suddenly out of nowhere it came out like this. And even I remember that you boiled the corns in the and we ate after. I remember details like from this and you came to my father come to pick me up from my friend's house, because she lived the closest to the scout area, and living in Israel. Very proud. I was born 10 days before the 6 Days War, and my father sent his parents a telegram to say that I was born and everything is okay. And the telegram was on the table on my grandmother and grandfather's house in Ramat Gan, and it was like to show everybody that I was the first grandchild. So when the officers came to announce that my uncle was killed in the war, so they had to write it down, to the day and the time, where it was, details like this, and they just took the paper that was the telegram. They turn it on and they write the death stuff on one side of the paper, and on the other it was like me was born.
Growing up in Israel, let's see. Well, in Israel, everyone knows everyone. Like every time you meet a person, he's always connected to you in some sort of way. So I think the most Israeli experience I have is actually outside of Israel, meeting other Israelis, and how every single time you either know them from some cycle in life, either from school or university or the army service or work, and if not directly, then through someone else, you just know everyone. That's most Israeli experience I have.
There's one day from the Jewish holiday, it's called Yom Kippur, and in that day you just fast for 25 hours. It's like a cleansing, and there's no cars in the road. Everybody's dressed in white, and it's like total feel of community, being part of something bigger. When you walk out and you see not even one car and everybody just walking around, it's pretty cool. Or just even as being a soldier, seeing people always helping out soldiers. Like, I've never gotten so many free things as I got as a soldier. Like, here, soldier, you're coming home, have a free falafel, or here, have an umbrella, it's raining. It's really cool.
Life can carry you many places and many scenarios, and in fact, I had an offer after graduation. I had a very good offer to work in the United States, to be an engineer in a nuclear power plant, which was very interesting for me. And they had provided me with a green card and whatever is necessary. But again, I was young and proud and patriotic, and then I said, thank you very much, and I returned back to Israel. I joined the Israel Aircraft Industries as an engineer, and I was proud to be in the team that created quite a few new aircrafts like the Kfir and the Lavi and Arava and Westwind and other aircrafts, and the most I was enjoying to be a pioneer in remotely controlled aircrafts, which I was one of the first ones to market it internationally to the US Marines first and other nations in the world. And this was a breakthrough in Israel and later on in the world. We were doing better than the Americans. I mean, American had a program for unmanned aircraft, but somehow we managed to be the first one to use it operationally. And we were very proud, and I am very proud of taking part in that project.
I wouldn't have an accent. I think, you know, I'm a rabbi, and secular children in Israel learn Bible in school, and it's their native language. I think it would have made it easier for me as a rabbi to have grown up studying Bible in school and to have Hebrew as a native language. As it is, I had to struggle to break through the brick wall of learning Hebrew, to acquire what I have. I had to work much, much harder because I didn't grow up in Israel. I've broken through the wall. I read fluently in Hebrew, I read newspapers, I speak fluently, I understand fluently. I've worked very hard on it. I love Israeli culture. I think if I'd grown up here, it would have been a little easier for me. If our parents had come directly from Europe to Israel rather than via America, but I gained America heritage by growing up in America.
Actually, I lived for 2 years in the States right after the Army service. And I guess I could have stayed there. I could have went to university there and could have started my life there. I think that what made me come back to Israel is I felt like in Israel I had true friends and true connections that I was feeling like I'm missing in the States. Like I had good friends there and everything, but it didn't feel like the same kind of connection I had in Israel. Plus I felt that in the States I found, I guess, less meaning there. It was always about trying to get a better apartment or a bigger car or a bigger TV, and I feel that here you less need to do that. It's more about the connections with people.
I've probably not grown up with the same values. I've noticed Israel is based on a lot of values that I don't see in other places. For example, like with America, or there's Halloween versus Purim. When Halloween, kids go door to door asking for candy, and in Purim, the little kids go door to door giving away candy. It's just different ways of thinking, different values of growing up with. I think I would have grown up with a more Western mentality of, you know, what you see in MTV, Sweet 16, 16 and pregnant, hopefully not. Instead of the reality that there's constant war going on in my country, it's a different bubble, it's a different reality to grow up in. So that would have changed a lot.
Provided that we'll find a solution to the problem that we have with Palestinians, I see a very good future to Israel, because we know how to do things, and because we place a very important role for education and studying and being innovative, and we can, and even now, before having peace with the Palestinians, we in most of we know how to initiate things and how to create new ideas, both in science and technology and agriculture, and so I see that Israel has a very good future. It will be better if after we find some sort of solution to the problems that we have with the Palestinians.
We should be living with the Palestinians not in peace, but on agreements, no arms. Children won't go to the army. I don't have any other wishes. I think Israel is a strong country. The people here are very intelligent, open-minded, and but they are living under stress, and the stress brings tensions and hate and everything that is in any other country. But we wish here in Israel that we think that we are special. We are not special, but we are very, very good parents, all of us. We give everything we have to the children. We think a lot about education. It's like the first place in our lives to give a good education to the children, since they are 3 years old and until 300, yeah. I think we are people that read, we know everything about the world, we have fantastic brains here, and and it's not a dream, it could be, but only Luther said, I have a dream. I have a dream, I hope it will be peace.
I would like to see a left-wing liberal government. I'm very unhappy with the government and the policies. Right now, Shira is at a protest against the Minister of Culture, who's cutting funds for the arts. I'd like to see a government, you know, a big change I'd like to see is for Reform and conservative rabbis, weddings and life cycle ceremonies to count. I do perform weddings, but then the couples have to go through a loophole to make it legal. They have to get married abroad or in the rabbinate office. I'd like to see equality for women in the rabbinate here, but we're working on that. And I think in some circles, being a female rabbi in Israel is an advantage, because secular people know that I'm not going to force them to do anything they don't want to do. I'm going to offer them a liberal and accessible form of Judaism. I'd like to see the refugees from Africa welcomed, accepted. I'd like them to get free health care. A few things I like about Israel and the policies are that there's universal child care, that it's very accepted and expected and status quo that women work outside the home. Women go to the army, so there's a certain degree of equality that you probably don't have in the States. There's paid maternity leave. It's seen, because it's a Jewish country, everyone's very happy if someone goes on maternity leave. And there's national health care, which Bernie and I feel very strongly about.
I wish that we live here in peace and with ourselves also, not even not just with the Arabs. And this is, I can say, more than peace. I wish that between us, between the Jews, it will be nicer and without raises, because this is something that I wish that my children and my grandchildren will live here without he's black, he's white, or something like this. No, I think it should. We have to do something about it.
A lot of changes. First, a change in the government. Really don't like how the last elections came up. Like that we won't have to deal with war all the time and with all our enemies around us. Feels like every summer. We start having missiles and start getting into like ready to go back into the army, and I'd really like us to live our lives, them to live their lives, maybe live in some sort of could be even financial cooperation, just in a way that just in a way that we can coexist here without having to go to war all the time.
Something I would love to see changing in Israel, just to stop being a war zone. There's constant wars between Arabs and Jews, and also inside of the country, also between religious and non-religious. That I would love to see change.
The main lesson that I learned, that we should be independent and we should be always able to protect ourselves and to against any threat, and never again should something like the Holocaust would happen to the Jews and to Israel. And this is the main lesson that I have from the Holocaust. And another lesson is that you cannot apparently destroy a nation, and you cannot, like Hitler wanted to, especially not the Jewish nation that through 2,000 years managed to go through diaspora and surviving it in various parts of the world. And once we are here and we are responsible for ourselves, never again such a thing will happen to us. Hopefully not to others. About my family that was in Europe, I mean the brothers and my uncles and grandparents that were in Europe at that time. Of course, I was at that time very young and I didn't know much about it. But most of my family, from my mother's side, only 3 sisters survived out of 8 brothers and sisters, and from my father's side also 3 were surviving, but the others were sent to Auschwitz and were killed there or murdered there. And at home, I hardly remember speaking about it. They took it, my parents took it probably as a fact and never, but did not speak about it in front of me. Later on, when I spoke to my surviving uncle and aunts, they also hardly spoke about it because it was a very big trauma on them. And this is my recollection of the Holocaust.
I just want to say one thing about the Holocaust, that no nation is ever safe, because a person like Hitler could be anywhere and could be to any nation. Jews were easy to kill because they had no country and no defense, but it can happen anywhere, like the Daesh today, that are killing their own people and in all the Islamic countries. So to us it won't happen again. And this is one of the first things that Israel established itself. This is the country for the Jews that can come from all over the world. There is place for everyone, and to us it will never happen again.
I think it's one of the reasons I chose to live in Israel, that I was very afraid of Jews not being in their own land, that they couldn't defend themselves. I experienced quite a bit of anti-Semitism in my life in many different ways. When I was 5 years old, someone said to me, "You killed Jesus Christ." I said, "I never killed anyone." In 7th grade, my class boycotted me because I wouldn't sing songs about Jesus. When Rafi was born, a childminder wouldn't take a Jewish child into her home. Rafi was once on a bus. When he was 6 years old, he went to Camp Shalom in Madison, and an anti-Semite cut the brakes on the bus. And I read a lot about the Holocaust. I saw a lot of movies, Night and Fog. I loved Elie Wiesel books, Mila 18, all sorts of books. And I guess I feel that with prejudice and intolerance and hatred, genocide of people can happen, and did happen, and it happened to Edelmans, which I realized when I met our relatives in Israel. They made it very personal for me, that it was our cousins who died in the Holocaust. I always knew that Nanny's sister died in the Holocaust, but I didn't know that my father's cousins, your grandfather's cousins, died in the Holocaust. And something about being a guest in someone else's country. I wanted to be in my own country where I was welcome and wanted, and but I would like to see peace in Israel, and I'd like to see us be welcoming to minorities, and there is a possibility of that. The Holocaust has very much affected my life. I used to go visit Koloman in Prague and hear his stories of being a partisan, of fighting against the Nazis, then of being caught by the Gestapo. He was in 4 camps or 6 camps and 2 death marches. I think 4 camps and 2 death marches. And I see it as something very personal, something very real, that very close, and it's affected my life decisions.
Suddenly I realized that my grandmother and my grandfather, that most of their sisters and brothers and parents and grandparents and killed in Auschwitz or something like that, and they didn't talk about it. and I've got a good memory. So if they were saying something, probably I would remember. But they didn't talk about it, and a lot of people in this generation didn't talk about there. In Hebrew, it's called sham. Al sham, sham, like there. They didn't talk. They didn't talk about sham, but it's the people that lived in Europe. At that time didn't talk, but they were here because they came on 39. April 39. So I don't know why they didn't talk about it. When I was young, I used to read. I like to read, and I like to read about the Holocaust a lot, even now. I like it. I don't know. It's not from only the Jewish point of view, but about the war and other sides of it. And I teach it history. I find it very important to teach the Holocaust and to know what your past was, and then you can go on to the future. And I think we have to be more sensitive about people that now live in not a good situation, like refugees. They come from Africa, and they're very they came here because they have no choice. It's not that they want to, and I think we have to help them, because we were refugees always, 2,000 almost years, and I think we have to be we have to change a little bit about how we behave with those poor people.
History of the Holocaust. Well, even though I had family in the Holocaust, I don't think it affected me that much. I think what affected me the most is growing up in Israel, where every year there's a day to mention the Holocaust, ceremonies. You hear all the people that survived and were there. So I think it's less of a personal experience, more of a national experience that I have of the Holocaust.
Well, I think it made me more patient to others, more understanding to people who are different than me, because the Jews back then were viewed as different. Like the Black history, it just keeps on repeating itself. And I think the Holocaust was such a big effect. I mean, slaughter of 6 million people just for being Jewish. You're just more patient to other cultures, not wanting to kill anyone for being who they are. I mean, everybody is the same.
The first and most important thing is to find a way to live, I wouldn't say even in peace, but at least in a quiet and agreeable borders between the Palestinians and Israelis. I mean, I had a dream, maybe when I was younger, that there will be peace between us, but as of now, I believe that the best thing is to have two separate states living side by side without interfering each other, and this will lead us to a better economical life, both us and the Palestinians. And this is my wish for the future.
Well, for my grandson Eitan, I'd love to see peace. I'd love to see acceptance and tolerance and sharing of cultures between Arabs and Jews, of Israelis who are Jewish getting to know, speak Arabic, just as Arabs speak Hebrew. We share food, we share hospitality. I think it's the leaders who create the problems, and extremists and fundamentalists. I'd like to see peace in the future of Israel. I'd like to see equality. I'd like to see equality of genders. I'd like it to retain a certain Jewish flavor, but it must be a democratic country. I'm pleased that Arabs have the vote, that they have representation in parliament. I love living in Israel.
I wish that we live here in peace and with ourselves also, not even not just with the Arabs. And this is, I can say more than peace. I wish that between us, between the Jews, it will be nicer and without races, because this is something that I wish that my children and my grandchildren will live here without he's black, he's white, or something like this. No, I think it should. We have to do something about it.
Future of Israel. Well, it's hard to know. It can go either way, but the way seeing it now is Israel's becoming less religious. I guess becoming more like the States, or more like Western countries, where it's more about I guess self growing, and less about like community growing together.
Hopefully brighter, hopefully in peace, hopefully equal, and who knows, there might be peace in the Middle East.